or Hai. Cologne, the city in the Federal Republic of Germany, in the northern Rhine-Westphalia. The million-plus city of Cologne is the fourth in population and third in area city of Germany, and also one of the largest economic and cultural centers of the country. Besides, Cologne, the largest center of a 10 million agglomeration of the Rhine and Ruhr region and the center of 2 million monocentric agglomeration.
The mother country on Rhine, how often called Cologne, one of the oldest cities of Germany, which played a significant role in the history of Europe throughout all the existence, since the Roman era.
Cologne is well known for the main temple, the Cologne Cathedral, one of the main Catholic temples of Germany. Cologne is located in the lower watercourse Rhine in the Cologne Bay. In the east from Cologne there are so-called Bergisches Land and hilly terrain Sauerland. In the west, National Park Fell. In the southwest, the Height Eifel. In the southeast, the Rhine-Slate Mountains. The highest point in the territory of the city, Königsforst, is located on 118 meters, and the lowest, the Vorengensky Break, on 37 m above sea level. Geographical coordinates of the city -50 55 E60, sowing. Latitudes and 657 E0. Longitudes. Cologne is in a zone of a temperate climate. In the city northwest winds prevail, often there are squally rushes. During the winter period temperature seldom falls below 0 C, frosts happen when moving cold air masses from Scandinavia and Eastern Europe. Summer in the city moderately warm. Spring rather cool and long, there are returns of heat up to November in the fall. The average annual sum of rainfall is 839. The history of modern Cologne begins in the 38th year BB with the basis of an oppidum. This was based by Mark Vipsany Agrippa, the commander of the Emperor Augustus after resettlement on the left coast of Rhine friendly to Romans of the German tribe. Living here before an Eberona were broken by Guy Julius Caesar's troops. In the 15th year add in the strengthened settlement surrounded with the deep German forests in family of the commander Germanic Agrippina, who is considered mother foundress of the city of Cologne, is born. Having become the wife of the Emperor Claudius and at the same time the Empress, she induces the husband to give to her hometown the status of colony, which is officially putting him in a rank of the imperial cities and entering the Roman Rite. In the 50th year Oppidum receives this status and Claudius's colony and author of Agrippinates. Latin of Colonia Claudia Ara Agrippinensium is called since then. In abbreviated form the city was called Colony Agrippina. And by the Middle Ages there was only colony in local Demotic language, Cologne. In the 85th year the city appears the capital of the province the Lower Germany. Germania Inferior. The event which predetermined the historical fate of Cologne. In Agrippina's colony office buildings. Praetoria, the palace of the deputy. Temples. For example, the Temple of Jupiter. Theatre appear. From Rome the administrative personnel, dealers, priests, just the peasants hoping for fertile fields and less high taxes moves. In 100 years the city already totals 15,000 people of the population, and it in wild Germany, while on other coast of Rhine possession of free German tribes already began.
becomes later Cologne the center of the glass industry. There is a mint behind city walls which will be fated to stay hundreds more of years. Smart country houses of the Roman nobility who retired to the province are under construction. In 310 under the decree of the Emperor Constantine I is under construction. And up to the 19th century only. The bridge through Rhine. By this time in Cologne communities of Christians and Jews already function. After the Milan Edict the Bishop Cologne Matem takes part in the First Ecumenical Council. However, since the end of the 4th century in Cologne there is an unstable situation. The rich colony falls a victim of attacks of aggressive Franks and also soldiers' revolts. At this time at Cologne his current patroness Saint Ursula and her 11 maidens accepts martyrdom. Attacks of Allen, Vandals and Saxophones were successfully reflected. Nevertheless in 454 Franks finally conquer Cologne and vicinities in fight at Sialpik.
Cologne becomes the residence of the King Ludwig of I.
Almost semi-thousand-year Roman period of Cologne with it comes to an end. In 508 after more than semi-centennial domination of the Ripuarian Franks Cologne departs to the kingdom of Merovingov. Later in 795 Charles the Great proclaims Cologne the archbishopric, and the friend Hildebold the first archbishop. The archbishopric Cologne included territories of northwest Germany and the Netherlands. This high status caused the beginning of construction of the first Cologne cathedral in Romance style in 870. However in 881 the city comprehends heavy disaster, attack of Normans who devastated Cologne and its vicinities. In the middle of the 10th century the Emperor Otto Veliki appropriates to the brother, the Archbishop Cologne Bruno, a title of the Duke Lotharingen. Otto's daughter-in-law, the Byzantine Princess Theophano settles in Cologne. Is based in Church Street. Panalimona to this day. By then Cologne already begins to become one of the most considerable cities of medieval Europe. Catholic temples are built, trade blossoms. In 1164 Reinhold von Dassel, the close friend of Friedrich Barbarossa, becomes the Archbishop Cologne. That favors to him a title of the Chancellor of Italy and gives the green light to transfer to Cologne from Milan of relics of saint magicians. Soon construction of enormous Gothic cathedral. 1248. Begins. Gradually also the consciousness of citizens of Cologne grows. Since the 11th century even more often there are skirmishes between the highest clergy and burghers.
In decisive fight at Worringena in 1288 Kylenets were on the side of the Duke of the Brabant minding Archbishop and won over him a final victory.
Cologne became the free city, though remained the center of the archbishopric. Exactly in 100 years after this significant event the Cologne University was founded.
And in 1367 in Cologne there takes place the meeting of the trade union of the German and Dutch cities at which the decision on declaration of war of Denmark is made.
This event is traditionally identified with the basis of Hansa, the greatest trade union of the Middle Ages. The city endures an economic boom, the period of the highest blossoming. With 13 until the 16th century Cologne, the largest city of the German territories of the Sacred Roman Empire. The Archbishop Cologne traditionally belonged to 7 electors having the right to choose the emperor. In In 1396 the power in the city passes from hands of patricians to craft guilds, on a Kiolsha. Recognizing value of the city, the emperor now officially gives him in 1475 the status of the Free Imperial City. Free Reichsstadt. In 1584 in Cologne opens official embassy of the Pope. By then the Catholic Church appropriated to the city the title Saint, which, except Cologne, is carried by only two cities, Rome and Constantinople. Despite it, in connection with crash of Hansa and wearisome Noisky War, the economic situation in the city sharply worsens. Even construction half of ready cathedral stops, and the medieval crane on one of towers becomes a city symbol up to the 19th century. For the rest, this period is noted in the history of the city by important events.
In 30 Years' War Cologne remained neutral, and therefore the Swedish army occupied in due time only right bank towns, which are the districts of Cologne now. On an archiepiscopal throne the dynasty Wittelsbachov in combination ruling Bavaria and Pfalz was approved.
Her representative Clement Augustus built up in Brühl near Cologne the magnificent residence, Augustusburg Palaces and Falkenust. After the French Revolution, numerous wars of France with the neighbors who were standing up for a return of a monarchist system began. Having subdued the Netherlands possession Gabsberghof, the French army moved to Rhein and in 1794 stood at gate of Cologne. To avoid destructions, the Cologne burgomaster voluntarily handed keys from the city to the French. All territories to Rhein were included in structure of France, and Cologne became the country French town. The attitude towards conquerors was double. On the one hand, the French closed the university and also many monasteries, destroyed many historical buildings and temples during reorganization, took out numerous cultural values to Paris. On the other hand, Kielnets were imposed by liberalism of the French Republic, with enthusiasm. Introduction of the Civil Code of Napoleon was apprehended. The last visited Cologne in 1804 and was enthusiastically accepted by citizens. The medieval town received modern boulevards and passages during reorganization. Exactly in 10 years, in 1814 the French left the city before the coming Prussian troops. On the Vienna Congress, Cologne and all Rhine region departed to the Kingdom of Prussia. To Prussians, residents of Cologne felt much more hostility than to the French. The source isn't specified 2650 days. Is occupation conservative, militaristic Prussian domination, but not the period of entry into the French Republic was perceived.
Nevertheless, at Prussians, Cologne becomes the significant city in many respects thanks to the beginning of an industrial era again.
In 1832 draw a cable line here, and in 1843 one of the first branch lines of Prussia, Cologne-Aachen opens. Besides, in 1842 construction of the Cologne Cathedral is resumed.
By the end of the 19th century, in suburbs of Cologne there are numerous factories and the plants that does it after expansion of the territory by one of the largest industrial centers of the German Empire.
In particular, from 1888 to 1910 the structure of Cologne included Deutsches communities, the tracing paper, Pfingst and Mulheim adjoining two city walls. Before World War I the population of the city exceeded card people. Since 1842 in Cologne, Karl Marx, the chief theorist of communism, becomes the editor of the Rhine newspaper.
In 1886-1907 Wilhelm von Becker, at whom there was the first expansion of Cologne, was the Oberbürgermeister of Cologne.
In 1917, after the beginning of World War I, Konrad Adenauer is elected the Burgomaster of Cologne. After defeat of Germany, Cologne for a short time becomes the capital of the self-proclaimed Rhine Republic. Then, in 1919, it together with all Rhineland enters an occupational zone of France. Despite inflation, the city quickly recovers from an economic crisis and consequences of war. In 1919 the university opens again, in 1923 the Münchensdorfsee Stadium, in 1924 trade exhibition complex in Deutze is under construction, and in 1930 Henry Ford builds the factories and the plants which are still the chief employer of the city here. In the 1920th years even the Ford Cologne model is produced. Nevertheless, despite economic development, at the city there were poverty, unemployment and a shortage of housing. On January 30, 1933 in Germany the Nazi party of NSDAP came to the power.
Jones to the last rendered repulse to Nazis on elections, and only in 1.5 months after Hitler's finding in power on municipal elections on March 12, 1933 NSDAP received indecisive 39% here that however allowed her to take the power in the city in hand.
Konrad Adenauer, the permanent burgomaster and the convinced anti-fascist, was displaced from the post. The power in Cologne passed to National Socialists led by the Geleiter Agar Kolonok and Joseph Groh. In 1936 the demilitarized Rhineland includes the German troops. Across all Germany riots of Jews and Roma begin. In Kristallnacht supporters of NSDAP burn an ancient Cologne synagogue and smash the Jewish shops, houses. From the beginning of World War II bombings which by the end will destroy it almost all city come. Up to 90% of buildings of the central region. Only on May 31, 1942 bombers of the British RAF destroyed more than 5,000 buildings. On March 6, 1945 the American troops occupied the city. In June, 1945 Cologne is included into the British occupational zone. In 4 years on the first post-war elections the former Burgomaster of Cologne Konrad Adenauer becomes the first German Chancellor and remains on this post of 14 years. The first post-war years restoration of the city, who is fated to end completely only in the mid-80s, is well underway. The German economic miracle doesn't avoid also Cologne. Here in accelerated tempo factories and the plants, buildings of firms, banks, institutions, culture objects are built. Modern infrastructure is created. In 1980 Cologne is visited by the Pope, and in the 1999th year that takes place here the Group of 8 summit at which agreements on the war in Yugoslavia were reached. Construction activity is humming in Cologne still. Only recently such projects as Lanxess Arena, the biggest hockey stadium in Europe and the biggest concert hall of Germany, and Media Park, beautiful modern quarter in which offices of media, movie theaters, studios of TV channels and other are concentrated, were finished. The population of Cologne makes 1,298,000 people. Cologne has several satellite towns located directly at city line, quite often borders with them pass directly through streets. The largest of such cities, Dormagen, Leverkusen, Bergisch Gladbach, Troisdorf, Herd, Braiul and Polkheim. The population of the Cologne agglomeration makes about 2.1 million people.
Population density within the city makes 2393 persons on km. The national structure of the population is very different. Here representatives about 150 nationalities live. The majority Germans -82.6% make, the others immigrants of other countries. The largest immigrant diasporas are Turkish, 6.6% of the population. Italian, 2%. The people of the former Yugoslavia, 1.56%. And the CIS countries, 0.97%. The indigenous people of the city speaks one of types of a Zapadnamemetsky dialect, on a Kiolsha. Kiolsh significantly differs from literary German, though isn't so strong as the Swabian or Bavarian dialects. The people who are well knowing the German speech generally will understand and the feature of a dialect is represented, in particular, by a replacement of a sound of G by J, almost total absence of a sound of R, ingestion of final sounds and syllables, and also numerous local words and expressions. Religion, 42. 5% of the population are members of the Roman Catholic Church. 16% carry themselves to Protestants evangelists, the others are generally atheists or Muslims. Also 2 Orthodox communities. One of them act at the Temple of Saints Constantine and Elena of Rock MP. And 3 Jewish. Jüdische Gemeinde Cologne, Synagogen Gemeinde Cologne, Jüdische Liberale Gemeinde Gescher la Masseret. In Cologne as in the city tolerant, various heterodox religious trends are quite widespread as Christian, Jehovah's Witnesses, New Apostolic Church, and Muslim and Buddhist. So for example, Cologne was the center of the radical Islamic organization of Milli Gayriush until recently. Cologne is divided into 9 city districts and into 86 city parts. Areas. As the city ancient and big, Cologne has many historical sites. However, many of them only the restored copies of the originals destroyed during World War II. During bombings by Anglo-American aircraft from 1942 to 1945, it was destroyed to 90% of city buildings, including numerous cultural monuments. The main attraction of the city is, certainly, Blessed Virgin Mary and St. Peter's Cologne Cathedral. He by miracle escaped in war, having sustained direct hit of 3 bombs, and today is one of the few temples of the city which remained in the original. Construction of this masterpiece of Gothic architecture began in 1248 at the Archbishop Conrad von Hochstadena. Before another was in the place of today's cathedral, Romance. In 1164 the Chancellor of the Emperor Friedrich Barbarossa Reinhold von Dassel, 1159-1167. Having won a victory over the city and the state Milan, I took out from him relics of 3 kings. In Orthodox divinity, 3 magicians. It extremely ennobled the city in the Christian world. As a result, the city didn't accept Lutheranism and remained Catholicism's stronghold in northern Germany. After relics of 3 magicians were moved to Cologne, the old cathedral couldn't contain crowds of pilgrims from all over the world anymore, owing to what the decision on construction unprecedented by the sizes of Piet and Ethnic Cathedral was made until then.
Today the main shrine of cathedral is stored in a magnificent gold arch. In cathedral the wonder-working crucifixion custom made the Archbishop Gero about 975, which is the most ancient of monumental crucifixions in Europe, is established. It served as a prototype for a set of images of the crucified Christ. In 1560, due to the lack of means, construction of cathedral finally stopped. Then there came the time of other architectural styles, and only during a Romanticism era started the 19th century. Over again there was a fashion for a Gothic style. In 1815 Gove brought up a question of completion of cathedral. In 1842 it was renewed under the decree of the Prussian King Friedrich Wilhelm IV. In 1863 both towers were brought to height of 157.37 m, and on October 15, 1880, in the presence of the Kaiser William I, the construction was in a festive atmosphere completed. Internal furniture of cathedral, as well as his look outside, strike with severe greatness, from which blows a spirit of the Middle Ages. The cultural values which are kept in and don't give in to assessment. Numerous frescoes, mosaics, niches, altars, statues of apostles, stained glass windows make a unique meeting of creations of the German architecture from the Middle Ages till the 19th century. Stefan Lochner's triptych Adoration of the Magi is one of the most known pictures of the world. Except cathedral, 12 Romance churches are among the most significant sites of the city. Big Saint Martin, St. Andrew's churches, Street. 12 Apostles, St. Severin, St. Maria Capitolskaya, St. Cunibert, St. Panteleimon, St. George's the Victorious and St. Ursula's Church are most interesting. In the St. Church of Maria in Ljuskakina original frescoes of the arches of the 13th century remained. The Church Street. Torona is the oldest church of Cologne. Her construction began at Romans in the 4th century. St. Jurian's dome is executed in the form of decagon and is the biggest in the world after a dome of street. Peter's Cathedral in Rome and Sacred Sophia in Istanbul. Fortunately, he not too strongly suffered in war, unlike the biggest church of the city after Cathedral, St. Martin, who was destroyed almost completely. In Romance Church of St. Andrew the philosopher and the theologian Albert Veliki, one of the greatest thinkers of the Middle Ages, canonized after death, is buried. Thomas Aquinas, who also became famous for the philosophical and theological works, was his pupil. He acquainted Europe with Aristotle's doctrine, having connected him to the provisions drafted by earlier living fathers of church, including St. Augustine. As the outstanding scientist-scholast, Thomas Aquinas laid the foundation of Roman Catholic philosophy and theology. His scholasticism, which basic position was a statement about a possibility of justification of belief by reason with use of all sum of knowledge gained by mankind, is obliged to the book by Thomas, the Theology Sum. In 1323 he was brought to the level of saints. Several decades later the philosopher Ion Duns Scott, living in Cologne, performed with the reason Thomism criticism. As the capital of Catholicism in Germany, Cologne has some other interesting churches of different eras. Both Church of Mennonites, and Church in Ursulinike, and the great churches of the Assumption of Blessed Virgin of Maria and Blessed Virgin of Maria behind a city wall constructed in Baroque style, and modern street. Elizabeth and the Krylski Soborchik, with the medieval cemetery, and many others. Other outstanding architectural structures of the city, except churches, are some remained monuments of ancient Roman architecture, for example, the Roman Tower near Cathedral or the ruins of a praetorium which are under streets of the old city. A town hall which tower is decorated with 124 figures of political, cultural and religious figures which life was connected with Cologne, several impressive city gate, Prussian fortifications and also the magnificent Gojen-Solonovsky Bridge with his 3 arcades, certainly, significantly supplement ensemble of sites. And the city, with his ancient small streets, houses some of which escaped since the Middle Ages as the Haus Overstolzy, Rhine embankment, wonderful parks and gardens. Stadtgarten, Volksgarten. A set of monuments altogether cause charm of this big city. In addition, Cologne is also the largest museum and exhibition center. On number of art galleries, he takes the 2nd place in the world after New York. A magnificent collection of pictures from the Middle Ages before the beginning of the 20th century, including such masters as Lochner, Rembrandt, Rubens, Van Gogh, Renoir, is stored in the Museum Veraferkarze. Other known museums of Cologne, the Roman-German Museum, the City Museum. Known for the fact that on his roof there is a winged car of the conceptual artist Hov Schulte. The Museum Schnuten. Church Art. The Museum of East Asian Art, Ludwig's Museum. One of the most considerable meetings of the modern art in the world. The Museum Columba and the Museum of Spirit. And in the Haus Farina where 300 years ago the well-known Cologne water, Cologne, was created. In the 10th church of Tetzalida, the Museum of Schnuten, devoted to medieval art bearing a name of the Dick of a cathedral capital of the Cologne Archbishopric of Alexander of Schnuten, who presented to Cologne in 1906 the collection which became a basis of a museum exposition is located. There are also chocolate museums, sport, beer and the ethnographic museum. Besides, in the city there are a zoo, a terrarium and the park greenhouse of exotic plants. Flora. In Cologne there is a Philharmonic Hall, there are 2 symphonic orchestras. Herzonig Symphonieorchester and Die Symphonieorchester. They operate several chamber choirs and also a set of theaters: Schauspielhaus, Studio Theater, Comedia, the Cassiopeia Theater, the Horizon Theater, Musical Dome, Puppet Theater, Folk Theater of Milovich and other work. The Cologne Carnival, which culmination is Rosenmontagszug for Maslenitsa, a fascinating hours-long carnival procession with generous scattering of sweets, is worldwide well known. Besides a carnival in Cologne, the festival of fireworks, the Cologne Fires, and Day of Christopher Street, a pan-European Light festival, are regularly held among other. In 2005 in Cologne there passed the World Days of Catholic Youth, in which card pilgrims from 193 countries, including 759 bishops and 60 cardinals, took part. About 1.2 million people took part in the finishing Massachusetts, which was carried out by the Pope Benedict XVI. Sport. The multipurpose Lanxess Arena complex located in the region of Deutz. In Cologne 2 soccer teams are based: FC Cologne and Fate. In a season 2019/20 FC Cologne play in the first Bundesliga. Isn't the leader in Germany, but I was a champion of national superiority several times. 1962, 1964, 1978. Is a 4-time owner of a Cup of Germany. 1968, 1977, 1978, 1983. In 1986 I was a finalist of a Neue Cup. The second most powerful football club in Cologne is Fate. Now plays in one of the lowest leagues. The club had no loud achievements. In the suburb of Cologne, Leverkusen, the football club Bayer 04 is based. In the city, the hockey is popular. The local club, Cologne, playing in the German Hockey League, is one of the strongest clubs of Germany. Eight-time champion of Germany. 1977, 1979, 1984, 1986, 1987, 1988, 1995, 2002. One of the most visited hockey clubs of Europe, on average for a match gathers 17,000 people. Also in Cologne there are a handball Gummersbach team, basketball team of Rhein-Energy Cologne, and the rugby team Cologne Centurions. In the city there is a Rhein-Energy stadium where the FC Cologne multipurpose covered Lanxess Arena, a hippodrome and a set of small stadiums and sports centers acts. In Cologne there took place 5 matches of the FIFA World Cup of 2006. In 2010 in the city the World Gay Games took place. Lanxess Arena, which is the most capacious hockey stadium outside North America, hosted matches of the World Ice Hockey Championship with a washer in 2001 and 2010. Here too there took place the World Cup of 2017. Cologne, one of the large media centers of Germany. In Cologne the headquarters of Westdeutscher Rundfunk. Die were the largest regional public and legal broadcasting company of Germany, producing up to 30% of volume of transcripts for Teleradio Giant Art, the national public and legal broadcasting company releasing the first channel of the German television, and a number of local TV and radio programs is located. In Cologne large studios of such known TV companies as RTL, Super RTL, NTV, Viva and Vox are located. In Cologne a part of offices of the German Wave, structural division of ARD, which is engaged in broadcasting to foreign countries, is located. A considerable part of offices of Deutsche Welle is located also in Bonn. The Cologne Film Studio, the largest in Germany. Is she part of the German movies is made exactly here. Printing media of Cologne are far not so significant. In the city there are only local newspapers and magazines. Express die, Kölner Stadtanzeiger and Kölner Rundschau. Economy. Rich deposits of brown coal on the western outskirts and proximity of the Ruhr region allowed Cologne to begin the transformation into one of the industrial centers of Europe in the middle of the 19th century. Today the leading positions in Cologne are taken. Machine and automotive industry. In the north of the city the big spaces are occupied by factories of Ford, which German center is there. Large production branches contain including Toyota, Grundig, Siemens AG, Alfred H. Scott. Chemical industry. In the satellite towns of Leverkusen and Dormagen the enormous areas are engaged with the plants and factories of a pharma concern Bayer. Food industry. In Cologne supports the main branch one of the major companies on production of confectionery, Stahlwerk. Besides, in the city the set of old breweries where famous Kölsch is made is located. Oil processing industry in industrial areas in the south. Textile industry and production of building materials. Calligraphy. Felix Botcher. Cologne is the homeland of Cologne. Eau de Cologne, the Cologne water. The first Cologne farina was produced in Cologne. A number of well-known companies founded the branches in Cologne. Evonik Industries, Shell, Toyota, British Petroleum, Ford. There is a leading Lufthansa center. In the Cologne to the Massachusetts/Deutsch complex regularly there take place various thematic exhibitions and fairs of various industries and art. Cologne was elected the center by such influential organizations as the International Chamber of Commerce, the Union of the German Industry, Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Union of Employers, Chamber of Craftsmanship and the Union of German Banks. Cologne for a long time one of the largest transport centers of Europe. It is caused not least by his geographical location on crossing of tradeways from Germany and countries of Eastern Europe to France and England on the one hand, and also the waterway across Rhine from the North Sea deep into the continent. Not accidentally Hansa was founded in Cologne. And today through Cologne every minute passes on average in 8 trains, including the well-known Cologne-Paris Express, the first high-speed international express. There is also a flight Moscow-Cologne. The city is surrounded and penetrated by a network of high-quality autobahns, through Rhine 8 bridges, from them 2 railway are thrown. Hohenzollernov Bridge, the busiest railway bridge of Europe. In Cologne one of railway directorates of Deutsche Bundesbahn was located. In Cologne the international airport which in recent years got value as the main airfield for inexpensive airlines works. Annually through and there pass more than 6 million passengers. Navigation, generally cargo transportation between the Netherlands, Germany and France is well developed. Passenger navigation lost form of value and is used generally for rest and tourism. In the city the modern network of public transport is well developed, more than 50 km of underground ways of a metro tram are laid. For tourists in the city there are 2 routes of excursion city tour buses with the audio guide in the German, English, Netherlands, Japanese, Russian, Italian, Spanish, French, Chinese, Swedish languages. The city of Cologne is divided into 9 city districts. The average city center: Rodenkirchen, Lindenthal, Ahrenfeld, Nips, Horvaler, Ports, Kalk, Mulheim. The last 4 are districts with the increased density of accommodation of foreigners and immigrants. Mulheim, Kalk, Ports and the region of Deutz of the average city are located on east coast of Rhine, the others on western. Each district is divided into several, from 5 to 14, regions. German of Stadtteil, which in turn are informally subdivided into a number of quarters. German of Stadtviertel. Districts were attached to the center during 3 territorial and administrative reforms, at the end of the 19th century, 1922 and 1977. Science and education. In Cologne there is a university, largest in Germany, at which 4,400 students study. The Cologne University was founded in 1388. In 1490 at the university the Botanical Garden was based. It was the first ever university botanical garden. All the 19th century the university didn't work, and only after World War I reopened the doors. Today the Cologne University, one of the most reputable higher education institutions of Germany, in particular, on polls of magazines of Spiegel and Focus. The economics department of the Cologne University is the most prestigious in the country among the public universities. Except the university, in Cologne there are a city institute, the Rhine Institute D, the European Institute Fresenius, Institute of Sport, Catholic Institute D. The Cologne Higher School of Arts D, the Higher School of Music and the Cologne Higher School of Cinematography D are especially known far outside the city. They are considered as the leading German higher education institutions in this directions.
As for scientific research, then Cologne can be proud of the world-famous Scientific Research Institute of Max Planck, dealing in the Cologne branch with issues of neurology and sociology.
In the city the headquarters of the German Center of Aircraft and Astronautics is located. The city of Bonn, neighboring to Cologne, was until recently the location of the government of Germany, and as his sizes were small, many state institutions and embassies were placed in Cologne and remained here still. It is first of all the German Council of the Cities, Stadttag, and such important federal institutions as Establishment for Protection of the Constitution, Establishment for Freight Transportation, the Supreme Financial Directorate, the Supreme Municipal Management, Management of Luftwaffe Germany, Establishment of Military Counterintelligence and other. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.